that humanity has what they refer to as the fortress. Now, the fortress is a combination of many lifetimes of traumas, false belief systems, misappropriated energetics where we've created out of reaction or fear or something like that. All of it is added to this sponge that's just soaked up repeated experiences of all these low energetics that forms this sort of barrier or cocoon around us.
What was he really onto that mainstream science wasn't ready for, but now we are in that sense?
In my view, Nikola Tesla, it's been said many times that he was way beyond his time, and he was. And I believe what he was tapping into, what he was getting towards, is understanding the living nature of energetics when you really look at it. When you look at lightning, for example, mainstream physics will tell you, okay, electrical potential, 101. You get a high potential, low potential, the difference across it just jumps the shortest path. One of the things that and I'm sure this will probably come up in discussion as well, is that when I speak with people and when I listen to them, it's not actually the words that I'm listening to, it's the energy. And this is one of the things that I tell people is they say, well, how do you know who you're talking to? How, for example, like the teams and so on and so forth. And I say, it's their energy. You cannot fool someone with your energy. You cannot, your energy is your energy broadcast. You can't hide it. You can't mess with it. It is exactly what it is. You can mess with your words and you can mess with what you say, and you can come across as a very articulate, say the right things, very smooth talker, but you cannot fool somebody with your energy. And, for me, that's what I listen to. And when people have open heart centers and they talk from that place, you feel a richness. And that's why I believe it's very true that when you got the information about being a disseminator of living intelligent information, this is very much what my teams have, and I've experienced through the work that I do with them, with my higher self, is that you are speaking energy packets, you're speaking living energetics that go out to people. And that's the important part. And when you speak with somebody who has a closed heart center, who's very mind orientated, you can feel that the waves of energetics that come towards you are largely empty. It's lacking, and that's not a form, that's not in judgment, is to say that because they're just constructing and articulating sounds to have meaning, but it's missing the energetics within the sound waves that are actually coming to you from that person. Yeah, so that's a very important concept, definitely.
I had a friend of mine or a mentor of mine once say that the words are just the mask to what's actually underneath.
Yeah.
So I love that you brought that point up. And with that said, Dr. David Clements, welcome on Just Tap In, brother. I wanted to start off asking, what are you most excited about right now globally and in your life?
That's a very good question. I've never been asked that before. I would say that what I'm really excited about, the glimpses that I have through the work that I do, connecting with the infinite source intelligence, the heart center, higher self, and working with the teams, the very high energy teams that I work with, there is always such a profound joy and excitement, like there's something so spectacular always coming, and that is right there. And it's almost like the feeling is it's being on the edge of your seat waiting for this amazing finale, but it's not just going to be a finale and that's it. It's going to be an opening to something that is going to be so spectacular, and everything that comes after that is going to be ever more spectacular. And what do I mean by that? What I mean is that I believe we're gaining access, we're starting to open up deeper levels of connectivity, bridging, if you will, to the infinite source intelligence. We each have a direct bridge or sort of calling line, if you want to call it that, to the infinite source intelligence. That's the profundity of the heart center that we have. And this is opening up. And as it does, the feelings of bliss and joy and just unending wonder and adventure, are just there all the time. And it gets stronger and stronger and stronger. And most people live their lives these days, and I have done myself, so I know what it's like, when you're living, striving, or just having to tackle things and deal with, bits and pieces of living in the world. It almost seems like that takes over the real truth that is waiting to emerge. And I know that a lot of people say, oh, that's, but that's kind of airy-fairy, and, the real world is this. Well, the truth is that from what my teams have told me, and I've experienced this myself, is that the world bends itself to our emanation. Now, the collective emanation of energy that we have been given off for a very long time is one of solidity, stagnancy, same old, and repeating patterns. Okay, so that's the world that we see fed back to us. That's literally the flowing quantum field, if you like, of that's all around us, responding to our emanations. Now, as we change, as we go back inside and we feel and connect with the heart center, the heart bridge, suddenly the heart intelligence are just an unspeakably profound energy. But it also goes beyond energy. And we can cover that a little bit more in more detail later if you wish. But it starts to emanate something more deeply profound. Now, instead of just emanating these old patterned energies of requesting the same old, stagnation, yada, 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 that sort of stuff. What we're now giving off is an energy which is brand new. It wants to bring everything that is brand new, that is pure joy and pure bliss. And now as that emanation gets stronger and stronger, your world starts to transform around you. It is effortless because this energy does it on your behalf. This emanation that we give off does it on your behalf. And the intelligence of the heart center is, people use the words infinite and unending and so on, but I truly believe there are no words, because words themselves are structures, and structures cannot describe that which has no structure to it. So it's an experiential thing that everyone simply has to just take the choice to experience for themselves and feel those. I feel it now. I see the sensation. I feel the sensation within me of that unending source intelligence, which is pure joy, which is pure bliss. It's pure compassion. It's all the good things that people seek. It's pure benevolence. And it organizes all material objects, all matter energetics in the most profoundly harmonious way to match what it is that you'd love to experience truly in the image of joy and bliss and peace and all those other things as well. It knows exactly how to organize all of that for you because it knows you as a living being. It knows you as the sacred heart that you have, the soul that you have, the higher self that you are. It knows you in that entirety. And as it lenses through you, it sees the full entirety of you, and it knows exactly what to bring you that is going to bring you the greatest joy that you are looking for. You don't need to go out there and go hard at it and plan and do all the other things that humans love to be doing. I've had so many examples of this in my own life. And I know it can be difficult sometimes because the flip side of this is that, we also have to deal with the outpouring of the old energetics that act like filters. So when we have this pure emanation and it goes through all these filtered belief systems, old energies, harsh emotions, traumatic experiences, all of that sort of stuff, all of that has to come out. And that's what we're also going through as well. And that adds to your question about what are you most excited about, because that's another exciting stage to this, because by clearing this out, by getting rid of this and going through these processes where for a little time you might feel a bit rotten, might feel pretty awful, but it really is this high energy clearing out the dross that says, if you get rid of that, if you let that go, your emanation can come through much more in a much more pure way, in a much more unfettered way, unfiltered way. And just watch what happens in your life as you get that out of the way and a better emanation replaces it. So that is happening every day for everyone. And part of the difficulty that I think most people are facing is the resistance that we have to actually letting that process unfold. Because some of it can be very deep. It can be very traumatic is one word, but also just the sensations of the emotions can be extremely deep and very overwhelming. And that's the problem where people kick in and they start resisting and they don't realize, just sit back, just relax, take a day, breathe through it, let it go, and it will pass. And then once it's passed, it doesn't come back. It does get replaced with the more true emanation of you. And it just goes step by step by step like that. So I don't know if that answered your question in a very roundabout way, but I would say, just to finish off on that's what really excites me: the return, the restoration of the human being as a sacred being of the pure intelligence of love. Now, a lot of people might say, "Oh, that sounds a little bit airy-fairy to say that," but it's not. Love is literally the living intelligence of the Creator. That's the way I see it. And love is a word, but what it points to is the presence or the essence, in my view, of the infinite source intelligence, which is unending benevolence. It is unending joy, unending adventure, and unending wonder, because that's a big thing that humanity seems to have lost its way on a little bit. And I know that too, because I went through a period. The wonder of life itself, the wonder of existence. How is it that all this came to be? And the pure unendingness of creation and creativity, it's just a pure wonder in of itself, just that simple question in of itself. Go ahead.
Go ahead.
Oh no, I was just going to say that, when you look up at the stars and just gaze and wonder, the pure beauty of the created space that is. And it's unending. It's going to keep expanding. New things are going to be created. New universes are going to get created. It's just an unending. It will never end. The joy just gets better and better and better all the time. And so does the wonder. And that to me is a very beautiful thing, because that is a core thing that we all have. And it will only get stronger so long as you let it out and let it expand.
Our world is shifting faster than ever, and it's so easy to feel small in the middle of all of this. Imagine being part of a movement, a tribe that is not just talking about the change, but actually living it. That's why I created The Deep Dive, a living spiritual ecosystem where every single day we go on a journey to remembering our most authentic self. Our members have joined from all walks of their awakening, and it's been such a blessing to witness all of the soul relationships that are already forming. As a community, we start every day with simple, powerful activities, and we're beginning to start envisioning the kind of world that we want to experience. This is way more than exclusive content or just another spiritual Netflix. This is about integration and leaving behind a legacy. If you're ready to move beyond knowing into becoming, then visit the link in the description or scan the QR code on screen right now to learn more. I'd be honored to co-create history with you. Beautiful. And as a society, I've seen that we've been so attached to our systems and understandings of mathematics, physics, all the sciences combined, and that's what's created our current reality. Yeah. You going to these top universities in Cambridge, Oxford, and getting PhDs in these, studies of the universe and of reality. Where do you feel currently those models or frameworks fall short, and how all of these other insights started coming through for you that go beyond what maybe our current understanding of mathematics, physics, all of these other sciences hold for us?
Yeah, that's a very deep question. So in the beginning, I have to say, it's a funny take. When I started my sort of career in mathematics and physics, I had no idea about there is even a higher self or any of that. To me, it was all woo-woo fluff. It was just, I was absolutely heading into an academic, intellectual career path. And it probably wasn't until maybe in the first year of doing my PhD, which was in superstring theory, I started off and I really wanted to peel back the layers of how does this universe work? What are the inner secrets? How does it operate? And through my first year, I started to get the feeling that something wasn't quite right. This wasn't going in the direction that I was expecting it to go in. I wasn't peeling back the layers as I was hoping to do as like a kid in a candy store, or, waiting to open my Christmas present or something, It just felt very flat. And then at that time, I went back to my dorm and I started looking online and started keying in certain keywords and, to do with energy generation, that kind of thing, and came across Tom Bearden's work. And I'm sure you may have heard of Tom. I'm sure many of your listeners will have heard of him. He got back in touch with me, which I was really blown away by, and we struck up a really beautiful friendship. And then later on down the line, he introduced me to John Bedini, who's another maverick, in my view, legendary inventor. Really, really amazing people, both of them. And then I got invited to take part in a documentary and got to meet John for the first time, which would be the beginning of working with John over a period of time. Now, as I went into one of his rooms with these devices running, it was my first tangible experience of quite a profound emanation of what I now call living energetics or living energies. And when I went into the room, there was no door. It was an open space. So it's not like the energy was being contained by walls and doors. As soon as you walked through the threshold, the energy went like really high. You could viscerally feel the heightened vibration in the environment in that room. It was incredibly tangible. You couldn't miss it. If you have even the slightest energy sensitivity, I'm sure you would not miss this. And then when I came back out, so like the density came back in and it felt really kind of yuck again, And that was really the first point for me to really understand and experience, living energetics. And I was still at that point, I'd done my PhD and I was now sort of, working in a university in Scotland doing a research post with advanced electromagnetism. And so part of this was to do with a collaboration along those lines as well. But during that post, I began to realize, and I was already very much in touch with my higher self, with my teams who are Arcturian and Pleiadian, that, things have to take a very different direction. What I'm doing now, I'd sit at my desk and my job was to mathematically model or understand what we were looking at in terms of John's and Tom's devices and machinery. And I just felt, there's nothing here in this language, this mathematical language, that is going to describe what's going on here. Something completely different needs to be here. And because the trouble is that mathematics itself is a structural linear language. It's very good at describing mechanistic or linear or, unfluid like sort of, objects or behaviors. But the second you come to a living intelligent field, it can't talk about that because it's not the principle of which it is. It's a principle of highly densified structure that doesn't change fundamentally, but can be mathematically, mapped in a very, very particular mechanical way so that you can derive all sorts of information from that. But living energy systems don't behave like that. They respond to you. They change with you. They interact with you. They're not static and linear in the same way that we used to say a solid wall, or, you throw a brick up in the air, it's going to fall down. You can very accurately chart positions, times, velocities, all that stuff very well with the mathematics language that we have. But when it comes to describing living energetic fields, that's a completely different ballgame, and a very new, almost a quantum language is needed to describe it, which we don't have yet. So at that point, I began to realize, and my teams would come in, and the Arcturians specifically, who, to many of your listeners who may not be familiar with them, this is a race of beings who are exceptionally advanced mentally, spiritually, emotionally. They're let's just say, for want of a better phrase, they're living organic technology, but I don't like the word technology, or let's call it innovations, are profound and are sort of awe-inspired around this galaxy. That's how adept they are. And one time they were showing me how to build a sort of type of toroidal coil system. And I was getting a little frustrated because I was still a little bit in that mode of mind crunching and trying to articulate or intellectually understand the structure of what was happening with the system. And it wasn't working. And they came in and said, what you need to understand is that looking at this from a heart-centered or heart intelligence perspective is going to be so different from looking at it from a mind perspective. And they're saying when you learn to live from your heart center, it is a world of difference, in their exact words to me, from living in a mind-centered way. And that really, really kickstarted me to understand you really have to learn to come down into the heart center and start to live and perceive from the heart intelligence. And the mind has a beautiful function. It is a beautiful instrument. So it's not like you neglect the mind and say, all right, done with that. It's like it's time, it has a beautiful function. But the trouble is what has happened is as humanity, we have been taught to be so dependent, so centered in the mind, to see everything, to hear everything, to interpret everything through the mind, and to almost forget the heart center. And as somebody who's been very well trained in academia and, thinking abstractly and analytically at very high levels, I can say that making that transformation from being very head-centric to being heart-centric, it was a tricky one in ways, because you have to learn to undo all the old very rigid mental perceptions that you have had, to learn to become more fluid in the heart perception, where the rigidity really falls away, and suddenly you see things that you could never see before. You have perception of things that you could never perceive before. And I can tell everyone firsthand exactly that is what happened to me. And then suddenly you get to perceive things like the inside of an atom, or the inside of fundamentals of energetics, where you realize, oh my goodness, that's a lot different from the pictures, that we've been shown. And I've been trained to see all my life about how atoms operate. It's very different. So there's no limit to the scalability of perception that you can have when you get into the heart center. There's no limit to the type of experience or information you want to experience. If you want to say, okay, I'd like to understand the energetics of this system. As a heart perceiver, what you can do is you can literally have a quantum snapshot of the entire energetic of what you just asked for. And you can literally move around it a little bit like a remote viewer does. But I tend to think of this as remote perception. It's a little different because the protocols that are in play with remote viewing, which I did that in the beginning as well, are not in play here. This is a very, very different way of going about perception, and in that way. So yeah, it's there's a whole load. I'm sure you want to maybe have a question on this. I'll let you I'll let you speak.
For sure. I mean, you mentioned one of the legendary inventors that you came across in your early days.
Yeah.
One that I wanted to bring up to the surface is Nikola Tesla. And I'm really curious to know, from your perception of things, what was he really onto that mainstream science wasn't ready for, but now we are, in that sense?
That's a very, very good question. Thank you for asking that. In my view, Nikola Tesla, it's been said many times that he was way beyond his time, and he was. He was one of, if not the greatest inventor on this planet, in my view. And I believe what he was doing, because still to this day, a lot of his work is still, under a sort of a hush kind of, stamp, if you know what I mean by that. And I believe what he was tapping into, what he was getting towards, is understanding the living nature of energetics when you really look at it. When you look at lightning, for example, mainstream physics will tell you, okay, electrical potential, 101. You get a high potential, low potential, the difference across it just jumps the shortest path. Well, some of the experiments that Nikola Tesla was doing with the energy that he was working with, it didn't do that. It took the most difficult path, So there's a revealing of very new energy behaviors. And when you look at lightning as well, the way it behaves, if you look at Tesla coils, the way these plasma arcs come off, the way they reach off like fractals trying to search for new development as they come off. The fundamental living energetics of plasmas and living energetics like that is so different from the philosophy, the structuredness, the almost dead mechanics of the way science is taught by me at the moment. And I believe that's one of the many ways in which Nikola Tesla was ahead of his time, because he really, as far as I know, was the first person. I know we've had many previous civilizations that were very advanced, so they probably did this as well. So he may not have been the first, but historically, in recent times, he really was the maverick, inventor that really stepped into that arena and said, hey, So the way I see it is that he began to really study and understand the living intelligent nature of energies as he was working with very, very high power systems, very high power AC systems, generating high voltage. He started to see things in energies that other people didn't, because at the time, people were still very much adhering to the structural nature of electricity and magnetism as Maxwell had set it out. And for those who don't know, Maxwell was the first person to come up with what are famously now known as the Maxwell equations, which are what is used throughout physics for electromagnetism. It's to this day, it is still used. But I believe that one of the things that Tesla was, and I thought was quite funny when I read it, is that a reporter asked Einstein once, said, so what is it like to be the cleverest guy on the planet? And he said to the reporter, I'm not sure. I think you should ask Mr. Tesla that question, because both of them had a dialogue. Nikola Tesla would write to Einstein, and he would write back and so forth. And when Einstein came up with his famous equation of E equals mc squared, which essentially says that, there is an energy quantity contained in a matter, a particle of mass m. What Nikola Tesla was saying is that actually, no, the energy isn't contained in the matter itself. It's in the space around it, and this is one of the things that he mentioned, I believe, in writing to Einstein. And I'm just trying to paint an overall picture here of where I believe Nikola Tesla was going. So I believe towards his later work, he was really getting to understand the living conscious nature of energetics. I mean, this is nothing that I can prove. This is my own personal take and looking at his work and how he unfolded. And so I believe he was ahead of his time in that way, because it seems to me, and from the information that my teams have given me, that that one of the reasons why Nikola Tesla's work had to take a little bit of a backstep is because the world, that level of energetic introduced too quickly would have been a very profound jump from a highly, highly structured and entrenched global consciousness that was very much entrenched in almost Dark Ages mentality still. And living energetics really breaks that down. It really dissolves it. One of the things I noticed while being around in the early days around John Bedini's machines is the stuff that would come out of you when you are near living energetic devices. It's like old stuff would just come to the surface because it can't survive in that environment. It just gets cleared out.
What do you mean by old stuff? Was it like physical?
Well, it's old traumatic emotions, old stuff you didn't even realize you had, childhood things, past life aspects as well. It would just shunt to the surface and it would just lift out. It's almost like the vibration was too high. It would just shake up or remove out, in just a tangible way of speaking about it. All the inner stuff that just needed to go, that was so dense and so low in energy that it was just stuck up in the human system, it would just start to rise out and release and go. So if you can imagine a world with all these systems running, there really wouldn't be any space for low energetics or low energies because it's too high. They can't exist. And I think that's a profound importance moving forward, because us as human beings, the more we open our heart center, the more we emanate very highly intelligent living energetics as the emanation we give off. Suddenly the space raises, densified, low energetics can't exist anymore. They start to either break down, dissolve away, or move away. And that's what's happening as we move up and up and up, as we get more influx of high energies from the sun, other sources, and even from the center of the earth itself. This is all bringing about this massive high energy transformation where we're moving into a new environment where the nature of energy and what I call physics is just another word for the behavior of energy. Physics as it is today is concerned with highly compressed structural behavioral patterns of energy. But what I'm interested in is the living, more fluid, high dimensional, more sort of freely intelligent energetic systems, not the highly compressed ones that behave more mechanically. So that's what we're moving into. And the innovations and technologies that are going to be coming, that Nikola Tesla, I believe, was the bedrock for kicking off, are these living intelligent systems that do interact with you. They don't just switch on and just function and turn off when you switch them off. When you turn them on, the fields interact with you. You can literally interact with them in a living, intelligent way. It's a very different way of living from what we're used to with the technologies we have now. It's vastly different.
What is the difference there with the living energetic systems that you say are coming in the coming years with the current, let's say, advancements of artificial intelligence that we've seen, like the large language models that we're now using almost like every hour of the day, What
I would say is that there is a few people have asked me that question. And the way I see it is that I jokingly call it the absence of intelligence because it's not a creative intelligence. It can't create anything. It amalgamates, it permutates, it basically takes things and jungles them around and gives you an output, essentially. And that can be very useful, but it's not, in my view, a true intelligence of a creative nature, which is the source intelligence. So it's very different. So as a creative being, we have the ability to create brand new concepts. And a lot of people, I remember learning from my teams a while ago, they're saying, well, when people are mind-centered, they believe they're coming up with a new idea. Oh, I've come up with this or this or this or this. What's actually happening is the mind cycles through your past, your history, your experience, what you've taken in informationally, permutes it and sort of does a sort of a combination with it and gives a new presentation of that combined information. And that in its own way is what I call absence of intelligence. I say that sort of lovingly, jokingly does, so it literally is a permutation system, but it's not a creator system. And so this is one of the amazing things that's coming forward when you ask the question, is that we are going to go through massive leaps and bounds because new living ideas that have never been here before and are truly brand new, not just amalgamations or permutations or combinations of things that have already been here. These are going to be brand new, forward-moving, paradigm-shifting ideas. And it comes from here. The heart intelligence is the creative center. That is where you can create truly new things from. Rather than just go through permutations and combinations and so on. So I would say that one of the delights that I'm looking forward to, and it's coming now, and a lot of it's just coming up, percolating through the seams right now, is that a whole vistas of things that people have never conceived of before are going to come through, and lots of people around the world, I think, are going to come up with some immaculate, amazing new innovations and ideas and ways forward, that, have never been present. And it's going to replace an old paradigm that is just essentially, when you look at it in its nuts and bolts core, is really just a regurgitation, a reamalgamation, a repermutation. Even though it's in a more complicated form, the philosophical nature of what it is still really the same. It just becomes just more of the same added together. So it looks more complex. It can do more permutations, more amalgamations, more combinations to fit and to make it look like something new is coming out. But really, it's just ever more giant permutations. It's not intrinsically new. That's the difference, as I see it anyway.
I've spoken to a few channelers and psychics that are tuning into, let's say, future timelines for humanity. And one thing that's been repeatedly coming through in those sessions is the use of plasma technology in a future timeline, maybe even closer than we think.
Yes.
What is your perception of plasma and why that would replace a lot of, let's say, dead or low energetic systems that we currently have?
That's a very good question. I'm really happy to answer that one. So let's take it this way. Let's take a computer program. something in a silicon circuit has predefined parameters of what it can and can't do, but the programmer comes along and just programs a functionality and it just hits go. Okay. So it does this function, it does this output, and you can do it repeatedly all day long and it doesn't change, it just does the same thing. But it relies upon a physical component structure, electronics components to be there to shunt, channel, gate, electrons in a certain way in order to produce that function or that output. Now, let's have a look now at something multidimensional, something more plasmic, something a little bit more that doesn't have that confining structure to it. One of the things that is inherent in high dimensional fields are what I refer to as intent codes, intent-coded energetics. Okay. And so, for example, people who go into an old house who place their hand on a rail of, I can actually feel weird stuff from whoever was here before, they can actually sense and perceive the living emanations of the energetic codes still in the fields of the material structure of the house and the fields that emanating from that structure, electric in nature and magnetic in nature as well. But those codes are there, and those who are sensitive can perceive those experiential and intent-coded structures that still exist within those fields. Now, as we move towards plasmas, where the streams of energy are fluid, they're not confined, they're not like structures like a silicon circuit or, something equivalent to that. These can move fluidly and they can respond to the energetic intent codes within them, like a moving plasma that can simply unfold with the intent that it has been given or that it has to move or change or do something. And that can change fluidly. And so for example, when I've had these experiences of when I do my remote perception and have biolocation experiences with my teams, the ships themselves have a living consciousness and you interact with them. The ship field itself is a living consciousness. The material, what I perceive as a material form, and the higher dimensionally you go, the more fluid and liquid it is. It's no longer a structured ship. It's now a light vessel. It's almost like a very powerful high vibrational sphere of energetics. I would say that it's above plasma, where the consciousness of the occupants are inside that sphere. And a lot of people have seen spherical orbs, other things around the earth that appear from time to time. It may be some emanation of that, but from what I've experienced, those things are very real. They're very advanced. And that ship can be moved wherever the occupants consciously wish it to go at any given time. The physics or the energy behavior of that level of energetic is massively, unimaginably different from the highly condensed, linear, sort of almost dead mechanical structures that we work with all the time.
It's no airplane.
No, not at all. It isn't. And it can change shape, it can morph, it can expand, scale, contract. It literally, all the limitations of the compression of energy, which we call solid matter, are off. Suddenly, now the energetics are very different. It's living, it's fluid, it can move in different ways, it behaves in different ways, and it plays in different ways. The energy is so joyful and expansive. It's hard to articulate that into words because you just have to experience it to know it. But yes, as you move higher and higher in those realms into the plasmic and then beyond, because plasma has 1 foot in the structural camp and 1 foot in the sort of multidimensional camp as well. So I believe that's a really profound step over that we're going into. But as we evolve more and more, it will start to move beyond the plasmic side of things into a much more high dimensional energetic physics as well. So yeah, I don't know if there's anything in there you want to focus on or open a window on it.
I mean, for those that know me and have followed this channel, I'm also a big student of Dr. Joe Dispenza's work, and he talks about having 1 foot in the 3D world and 1 foot in the quantum world.
Yes.
Do you feel like as a collective and as a species, we're going to start moving into having 1 foot in this 3D dense world and also the multidimensional world? And what would a society like that behaving? I mean, you've interacted with these races, the Arcturians, the Pleiadians, the Elohim. How do they operate in their reality? in reality?
Yeah, that's a good question as well. Let me answer it this way. One of the very intriguing things I think is happening, and it's very much on the key of what you just said about one foot on this side and 1 foot on that side, is that I believe that humanity is the human experience, the human experiment, whatever you wish to call it, is jumping into a realm where we're going to get access to high dimensional energetic principles, high dimensional conscious energetics. Call that quantum, give it whatever word you wish, but it's more fluid, living, conscious energetics, while still being and having a physical form. And what's being communicated to me by these races is that human matter, the matter that makes up the human body, is going to undergo a change. And so is matter on the planet in a step-by-step way. And instead of being highly compressed forms that just behave in this highly sort of, that more or less the way that mainstream physics say that they behave, things are going to start to change. New qualities, new characteristics, new behaviors of energy are going to come about. Now, I feel, from my perspective and what my teams have told me, is that humanity is going to go into this profound transition where we will have access to very high dimensional energetic principles, but while still having a physical body. But that physical body will be heightened in its energetic function as well. So we'll still have human bodies, but we'll be able to do profound things that have never actually been done in a physical body before, because this is part of the experiment about marrying or merging high dimensional principles of very fluid, expansive living energetics with highly condensed structured energetics. And what sort of experience, beautiful brand new experience, can a being in a human vessel have when you have both access to high dimensional energetics, yet have a physical, elevated body at the same time? I believe that's where we're heading, and that's what we're going through right now. So I hope that answers your question on that part. Is that is that what you were meaning, or?
Yeah, I think the other word that you've used before is luminescent bodies.
Right.
Why
Yes.
did you use that word to describe the new iteration of the species?
Yes. Well, it's, when you look back in history, the many masters that are written about in different texts all over the world, one of the common connections is that with these beings, there tended to be a luminescence or a sort of a glow, but nobody could really put their finger on what the glow was. Now, the way that, again, this is again in my perspective, and the way the teams have relayed this to me, as matter energetics change, and then suddenly you become a greater and greater opening and conduit to higher source intelligence that comes within your heart, matter literally begins to luminesce. It changes its state. And so it's a little bit like the closest I can link it to is like when a glow bug turns on and their butt starts glowing, that kind of thing. But essentially what it is that when that level of living intelligence goes through matter and matter changes, suddenly it starts to emanate. It starts to emanate those living light codes. It starts to emanate light in a very different way, because the nature of photons, or the packets or the quanta of light fields, as is known in mainstream physics today, that's another thing which my teams have told me, that photons are not just these little point objects which are quanta or energy packets or light field. They are living libraries. Whenever they interact with you, for example, when you go outside in the sun, and the sun hits you, that is that the photons shower you, they interact with you and they leave. They impart coded living information to you. And when they leave, they get a copy or a copy of your book, the living library of your life, and they take it with them. And that gets bounced around and shared. That's the living light web, if you like, of interactivity. And what you receive and what you transmit depends on your level of energetic. It's almost an access card. If you've got access to certain bandwidths of dimensional resonance, then you'll be able to download within that and transmit within that, and so on. And so light itself, the living nature of photons themselves, the nature of light, the way we see it, I believe is going to change as well. So there's a whole load of things which, in my view, are going to be changing, and it's going to be a profound shift in environmental changes, human package changes, let's put it that way, the human body, how it behaves, how it does everything. But when we open to that core within us, the source energetic that comes through starts to literally emanate within all of your cells. It bridges into your cells. It expands throughout your cells. Suddenly your entire being becomes a very powerful and prominent living energetic system. It does have intelligence now. Many people have spoken about this before, but the level of upping in its living intelligence is really going to change. And it's all because of the infusion of the source love light energetic that comes out from the center of the heart, that's just slowly building, and we're getting an acclimation process to that, and our bodies are acclimating too. So this is the unfolding as I see it. So I hope that gives you a little bit more about your question there.
Yeah, a word that just came up for me is disease or illness. And as you're describing this new energetic living system of our bodies, is there still room for, the current chronic illnesses that we have in society?
One of the things that I've experienced with going up with my teams is that when I look at them, they are immaculate. And I know that's a very odd word to use because it's used in all sorts of, genres and contexts. But what I would say is they're the ones that have more of they have a physicality, but it's not a physicality like we know it. The beings that I've worked with that have what I perceive as being a body. It glows. It has this effervescence. It doesn't function the same way that we do. The living intelligent light within their bodies organizes everything and optimizes everything for perfect flow and function, because that's the nature of the living intelligence within them. And that's the nature of the source within us. Now, the trouble is with humanity, because we've experienced such a diminishing as part of this experience or experiment of what would it be like to experience separation or the apparency of no source, no connection to source. I mean, that's not actually possible, but you can diminish it like to a point where you think you've got no connection and there's nothing there. Now, what happens is it's like a photocopier. So if you put a photocopy, a beautiful page of text into a photocopier, and you press go and you take that page out, and you're going to take that page again and you're going to put that into the photocopier, and you're going to take a copy of that. You take that output, put that, and you keep repeating that cycle. It degrades and degrades and degrades because there's no intelligence correcting the errors as it gets copied. Okay. And in a very similar way, what my teams have said is that, because of the lack of source intelligence within the human body, cells now have to refer to a previous generation of cells in order to get their instructions of division and how they divide. And there's only so many divisions they can do before they stop. But when I look at these beings, these high dimensional beings, the living light inside them literally immaculately performs all biological processes they need without error, without problems. And this, I believe, as humanity really starts to open up its heart center and really lets the infusion of that source intelligence through, lets the infusion into cells, lets the infusion into even the subatomic particles, the atoms, the molecules, the chains, the DNA, everything that comprises and makes up eventually the cellular system or the structure you call your human body. I believe, everything is going to change, and it's going to be an amazing future. It really is. And this is why I say to people, it's one of the beautiful things about it. It's already all inside you. You have no dependence on anything outside you. You don't require anything outside of you to do it. You just need the practice, the opening, the connection inside, the willingness to really open up and allow the infusion of your higher self, your source self, to come in and work with you and start to bridge that infusion in. So that's the way I would choose to describe it.
What holds us back from fully opening the perception of our heart?
You have some really good questions. I think it's multifaceted. One of the things that my teams and the infinite source intelligence that I work with have said is that humanity has what they refer to as the fortress. Now, the fortress is a combination of many lifetimes of traumas, false belief systems, misappropriated energetics where we've created out of reaction or fear or something like that. All of it is added to this sponge that's just soaked up repeated experiences of all these low energetics that forms this sort of barrier or cocoon around us. Now, one of the other things is to do with, because of that sort of walking down that path that humanity has taken, and the ever diminishing access to source intelligence, the intelligence of compassion starts to fall down. The intelligence of joy and wonder and delight and the wish for others to experience that too starts to fall down. Suddenly, you now start to move in a very self-centric, survivalistic, everyone's out for themselves, as through the dark ages going on, and we're coming out of that now. But that was very prevalent. That was a very big part of societies around the world for a long time. And so there's a lot of harshness that had been created during those times. And these are old patterns, old fragments from way, way past. And what it does, it taught people that, oh my goodness, if you open your heart, my goodness, you're somehow welcoming somebody to hurt you. And it's nothing could be more opposite than that. What you're doing is you're beginning a transformation to dissolve all of those energetics that ping up when somebody misbehaves to you and makes you feel that you're being hurt. When in fact, in some of the texts, a lot of people speak about the masters that, they had no reaction. They were just this pure delight of joy. They would smile. Even if you were shouting the most awful things at them, they couldn't be triggered because they have nothing inside them to be triggered. They don't have the layers of the trauma and the dross that suddenly rushes to the surface when somebody says a key word or this or that, so that they can simply stay in their center. And now as you practice to learn, this is one of the big things that my team said to me. As you practice the art of learning how you react to people with your feelings, your thoughts, and notice if somebody says something to you and you go, oh, I don't like that. What is it you're feeling right now? Just hold that for a second, hold that feeling, feel that energy, because as you feel it, you're now gaining access to it because it was lying there dormant deep in your cellular structure, deep in your whole makeup, just lying there, giving off these emanations and helping to create your reality with problems. Now, suddenly if somebody comes along and says, whoa, okay, I had that reaction. Where's that coming? Let me just feel that for a second. Okay. And as you feel it, because the biggest problem is that people have pushed this stuff into their unconscious, and the unconscious is like the garbage dumping ground of everything we don't want to face, fear to face, or just want to push away. And so that sits down there, but it's still broadcasting. It's still emanating. And so people wonder, why do I keep getting that person or people like that person in my life or this experience keep happening again and again? Well, it's because you're requesting it again and again, because the stuff we have in our unconscious is still broadcasting. You are still requesting energetically a repeat of that experience because that's what the fields respond to, your emanation. That's a very, very big key point. That's something I had to learn that I guess that by being thrown in the deep end in my earlier days, because you keep banging your head against the wall and eventually said, do you understand now? Every experience you have shows you something about your own energy nature, what you are requesting, what type of experience you are requesting, the people you are requesting, So when you learn the art form of, okay, instead of just going off and, reacting and blasting back, I'm going to say, okay, okay, so this is coming up now. And this is clearly somehow, I don't know how, but I've requested this to happen. And so the energies that are coming up are really the thing that I need to look at. When you breathe into that energy and let it sit, it shakes loose. And now as you breathe out, you can exhaust it and get rid of it and literally pump it out and use the breath as a pull it up, get rid of it, blow it out. And as you keep pumping and blowing, eventually you exhaust the traces of those energies that were broadcasting that got triggered. And now suddenly they're gone. You have that experience again. You don't have that reaction anymore because you've just gotten rid of those explosive energies that were hiding down in your unconscious or your subconscious. And now you can respond in a different way. And that's one of the big things that I've had to learn many, many times that my teams, the Arcturians, my higher self, the Pleiadians, have very gently and very peacefully tried to remind me and they had to teach me many times. I didn't get it first off. So if anybody's thinking, this is hard. It's an art form. It's because you're unlearning old humanity habits of reaction. And instead you're going to consider energy awareness. It's very different. So you're becoming aware of your energies, the energies you hold, and the energy of your body, the energy of your consciousness, all of it together. And you're becoming aware of, okay, right. So I really don't want that experience again. So I'm going to release those energetics. So I no longer broadcast and therefore request that experience. And I'm going to change that and have my higher self fill that space with my true energy. So now I'm broadcasting that in that space instead. And as you keep working through those reactions and allow the energies to come up, you are step by step working towards the integration with, the infusion with your higher self or your soul self. And that is one of the processes we go. I know there's very many different ways that people do it. This is just the way that I've learned to do it. But I would always encourage people, make it your own, play with it, but never ever be afraid of the reaction sensations. Like one of the big things in the spiritual community is, oh, I mustn't feel anger. No, that's bad. No, that's not spiritual. It's an energy you have inside you. It's simply something that needs to come up and be released. It's just an energy. It's about really being, and this is one of the things that the teams were very, very prominent with me on, being crystal clear with yourself is one of the massive steps that humanity has to take and can take. When you are absolutely honest with yourself about who you are, what you feel, how you feel, what you're thinking, without pushing anything to the side, and then can make a conscious choice. Okay, so this is happening. Yeah, I don't like the feeling of that, but I can change this. So where is it coming from? I can release that. I can infuse that space that's left behind with my high self. I can then move closer to my high self, because now you're becoming a response-able energetic being, a responsible energetic being, because you're now able to respond intelligently rather than react. And that's a big trouble with humanity. People are always reacting rather than responding. It's a very, very different environment. I know that sounds a bit preachy. I'm not trying to be preachy here, but just share some of the insights that I've gained, because I've hit my head so many times on the wall of going through these and eventually got it and had the aha moments and realized the beautiful, gentle, graceful way the beings would come and say, great. You see it now. Now, go forward with that and learn to go higher and deeper with that art form that you've just learned, because it will really accelerate you, beyond all the troubles and tribulations and trials that we go through, that keep repeating and wondering why this keeps happening to me, Well, it's because, there's just things within you that you are requesting the experience that you're not yet aware of. But if you allow that experience to trigger up within you the energies that are requesting it, then you can clear them and be free of that cycle. So that's the way I see it.
And after that long process that you went through, getting to where you are today, every time you wake up in the morning, what do you request from source intelligence, the universe, God, whatever word we want to use for that, about how you want to see reality that day?
That's an interesting thing. Yeah, what I would say is that in the beginning, I used to make a lot of intentions about what I'd like to do and everything. But one of the things they were saying to me is, and also in meditation, I used to meditate a lot as well. And they're saying, instead of sitting down and closing your eyes and meditating, can you hold that energy in the waking space? Can you practice holding that energy, not just when you're meditating or you're in a nice space and everything is great? Can you now go out in the world and can you hold that state? Can you hold that energy? When you go to sleep, can you hold that energy? When you wake up, can you have that energy there? And the more you practice that, you acclimate your body, your mind, everything to fully being in that, no matter what. And from there, when you have that access, then you can lens, using that intelligence, energies, however you wish to lens them. because that essentially is what we are. We lens source intelligence into creative forms, into manifest forms, which includes realities and other things like that. And it's all remembering and reacclimating ourselves to our source intelligence so that we can remember we're not just structural beings wandering around in the wind, getting bumped off this and just trying to get through the day with minimal, knocks and bounces. We are literally profound energy lensers and creators. And when we remember that, that state of being, there is nothing about our reality we cannot change, create, and do with as we would love to do it. But there's also an underlying sort of presence there, the continual emission of that source energetic. Even without you making any intent, if you have a sufficient level, it literally goes out and emanates and rearranges everything to bring you the greatest joy, because it intelligently knows what it is that you truly love. It intelligently knows what it is that is going to bring you the most joy, and it organizes things on your behalf. You can make alterations and changes and make intentions to re-lens or change things if you wish, but there is this sort of foundation emission that is there that will make sure your environment really starts to mirror the true love, the true joy, the true beauty of who it is that you really are in your core and what it is that you want. And you can do all sorts of cool things with that and on top of that as well. So I don't know if that answers your question, sort of again in a roundabout way.
Definitely. No. And in the beginning of our conversation, you were mentioning how, yes, as a species, we're heading more into a heart-centric perception. But it doesn't mean to leave behind our mind and the intellect. And yes. I'm curious to know, with your interactions with these beings, the Arcturians, all these other galactic races that are more heart-centric, and they have developed in that way as a species, how do they use their mind? And how could we start learning from them to go to the heart, but not leave this behind, right? But just use it in the way that it was meant to be used in that way.
Yes. Yeah. Another good question. What I would say is that what it has been very clear to me is that through the assistance and work I do with source intelligence and my higher self, is that the mind, let's go back a little and perhaps put it into a little bit more context, that with this experiment of humanity, going through this, what would it be like to be, disconnected or, separate from, source intelligence? Now, as humanity goes forward, it starts to get more survivalistic. It goes into the mind, more mind-centered, and everything becomes like a sort of get or take kind of scenario. But what happens when you reintroduce the source intelligence opening here, and it starts bridging up to the core of the mind, to the pineal, and that source intelligence emanates and starts to blend into and starts to infuse into, the neurological system, the brain as a whole. Suddenly, the mind starts behaving not as a destructive instrument or a selfish instrument or an instrument of survival. It becomes an immaculate device of image generation, imagination. Image generation. So that, I believe, is what happens. And so this is what's happening. We're really learning, in my view and my experience, to come from here, but all bridges move out to your mind, to every cell, every part of your body. So your entire body, your mind, your nervous system becomes an immaculate extension of, an instrument of the heart-centered intelligence itself. So it doesn't leave anything behind. Nothing is like, okay, we're done with that. We're not doing that anymore. No, it's reimagining the human form as a source intelligence system that is there as a vessel for consciousness, source consciousness, to come in and have a beautiful physical experience. But when you have that bridge open and everything is really infused with source intelligence, your whole world is going to be different. Everything inside is going to be different. That is where I believe that humanity is heading to. I hope that answers your question there.
Yeah, and you brought up this word, the experiment that we're in.
Yeah.
And essentially, yes, we are an experiment to see how far we could leave source consciousness and play around in these dense physical realms, what happens when a society or a race like humanity says, we're done learning from duality?
Right.
Where are we headed next in that sense?
Well, that's, interesting enough is I believe that, duality is really created from, opposites, from the zero or the point of no duality. You can expand fields of different polarities. So you have one polarity and its opposite polarity, but when you bring them together, they collapse back to the zero. And so one of the things that, as you become more heart-centered and you bridge to the mind, suddenly a lot of the dualistic qualities that the mind has oriented or become orientated to, being a electrochemical system, because, the current state of electrical energy we have down here has a high degree of polarity to it. But when you infuse it with living source intelligent consciousness, because imagine in the dark ages where there was so little source intelligence, it was almost pure polarity. So everything then plays out in the polarity mechanistic ways. It plays out in the game and the rules of the game according to the way polarities work. But now, as a game changer, now when you introduce source intelligence, infuse that back into all aspects of you that were orientated to polarity, something changes. Now, instead of behaving by the rules of polarity, they now behave according to the intelligence of the source love light that is within you. Very different. And so that's the way I see it's humanity heading towards. It's a move away from this entrenched, massive polarity experience. Those polarities will start moving together and you'll move towards the center. And now suddenly you're living as you're moving towards a non-polaristic source intelligence experience where reality creation is not just polarities. It's everything that polarity cannot touch. It's so hard to describe it because the language I use is structural.
But you've seen
I felt it. Yes. I've had an experience of what it is like to be in those kind of energetics. And the way I would describe it, it is such a profound beauty, but the word beauty doesn't do it justice. It is such a blissful experience, but the word bliss doesn't do it justice either. It really is something that you simply have to experience yourself. Imagine just being the most excited child, times by, 1,000, 10,000, and then all of life just becomes a delight beyond anything that you could ever imagine. Think, oh yeah, that time I had in my life was so beautiful. That doesn't even compare, to what's coming our way. And when I meet these beings on their ships, the level of delight and beauty and peace and bliss that they have is such a beautiful thing to be around, and that is where I believe humanity is headed. And the intelligence within them, and this is another issue as well that a lot of people talk about, when you connect with different beings, how do you know who you're talking to? Well, again, like we discussed, before we went live, or you started recording, is that you know them by their energy. You see, source intelligence reaches out to another being to help uplift them in source intelligence as well. That's its benevolence. But it doesn't overstep. It won't overstep your free will. So if you choose not to engage, it won't engage. It doesn't force itself on you. It will wait patiently until you do, but it will wait. And so that is the difference when you get near these beings that have really opened up that center and they live as source intelligent emanations within the vessel they're occupying. That sweet intelligence within them is always looking to uplift you, to help you, to say, oh, if you move this or clear this out of your system, you'll be able to get to greater depths of joy. Did you realize this? It's always looking to do that. Whereas, another being that might have an agenda, their energy wouldn't emit that. You would feel the sensation of that agenda that's there. And when I've met these beings, one of the first things they do is they give me space and time and say, can you feel our energy? Can you feel who we are? Can you feel what it is we'd like to do here? And can you sense that within yourself, that truth? Because you can't deceive somebody with energy. The energy is what your energy is. You emit energy and you can't stop it from emitting. It's emitting from you. It's like saying, how could you say, The sun is always emitting its light. You stand outside or you stand inside. It's still emitting its light. Do you choose to go out and sense it? And it's the same with these beings. When you feel their energy, their core energy, where they're coming from, and you feel, are they source orientated, or are they more agenda orientated, or perhaps mind orientated, or a whole different mixed bag of things that they can be? And it's the same with human beings as well. We discussed before, when somebody's talking, when they're really talking from their heart center, you feel the energy emanation. You feel the living intelligence that emanates with the words they're saying. So it doesn't even need to be a structural language. That's just a mechanistic language we have. But the real intent, the real language that's communicating is coming out through, and that's what you feel. And that's really where you can feel who people are, where they're coming from, what it is they want. You can sense by their energies. I've heard so many stories of people, and myself including, having experiences of people that were so good at talking, so good at articulating, but you get near their energy and you feel, no, sorry, your energy is saying something else.
It's pure poetry, but there's no depth inside of the words.
Exactly. And that's and this is why I always say to people, learn to really encourage that sensitivity to energy. Allow yourself to be vulnerable to being sensitive, to feel energy, because then you'll really get to feel what people are like on the inside, what they're really broadcasting, what they're really doing, and you can really navigate so much better, through life in that, and make better choices. But yes, to me, that true intelligent core energy is what it is all about. It really is that simple.
And I know your teams have said that this conscious development can go as fast or as slow as we wish, or not at all, for that sense.
Yes.
What determines, I guess, I don't want to use the word speed, but for a lack of a better word, going toward this new perception, what determines if it's a slower process or a faster process for certain people?
Yeah, another good question. It's a few things, I think. One of them in my experience has been, are you currently processing something, and do you need to take your foot off the gas a little and just relax and integrate for a little bit? Because I've overdone it many times and crashed and burned kind of thing with some of the energies. And the teams are very playful, very joyful. You see, well, we kind of tried to tell you, but you really did want to push forward on that one, So there is that. There's also a person's path, their unique soul path, because before we incarnate, we'll decide, okay, so as part of this puzzle piece solving that we're down here on the earth to do, I'm pretty good at solving those kind of energetics down there. So I'm going to go and I'm going to incarnate into a body or a family field or something like that is pretty rich in those energies. So I'm going to go in there. It's going to be rough, but I'm going to work through them in my own way, at my own pace. And bit by bit, I'm going to solve the energetic stuckness within that family field, within that physical body field, or a whole bunch of different field systems that there are. And by solving that, I will then introduce the solutions into the earth grid so other people can have that available. Now, so depending on what path that people take, what sort of route they go through to do that, they may take a real tangent down into something very deep and heavy that, takes them years to get through. Because of the density of it and how much time it takes to break that stuck energy system down, to resolve it, find the solution, and then move on. And so it's kind of horses for courses in that way, because somebody might be going through something very quick. Oh yeah, half an hour. I saw that, got that little puzzle piece, dissolved it away. It's gone. I'm good to go again, So you can sort of really shoot forward, and then you can sort of go into something heavy and take it a little bit slower. And then on top of that, the third aspect, and there may be more that I haven't considered, is your free will choice. You may decide, yeah, I know I've got that to do with, but for right now, I just want to chill. I just want to go on holiday, enjoy some lifetime, enjoy some family time or friend time, or I don't know, go surf, go fly a kite, whatever it is that you want to do. So that is all taken into consideration by the living intelligence within you. We're not being sort of towed by a line and saying, right, you must do this now kind of thing. It's not like that. It's a very gentle, honoring process. And so there are those factors that are involved. And so in my past experience, when I've got like a little bit sort of, full of myself and really wanted to go, I overwhelmed myself and realized I really need to learn better ways of understanding. Okay, what am I okay to do with right now? Do I need a rest night now? Do I need to take some space? Do I need to take a week, a month? Whatever it is. It's all learning to understand yourself energetically, where you are, what you're good to handle. And if it's too much, you can ask your higher self, look, this puzzle piece is too much right now. Just take it back up for the time being. I'm going to take a respite, and you can bring it back once I'm ready. And that's happened before. You can do that, So there's all these little tricks kind of thing, or little things that you can use that are really handy because I didn't know those at the time. I had to kind of learn those going the hard way, So if that helps anybody, by knowing those little snippets of information, then that's wonderful.
There is a lot of, I guess, new physicists nowadays that have come to conclusions about this reality, equivalating it to a computer simulation game. Where are you with that perception?
That's a deep question. Now, there's no doubt in my mind that a lot of the perceptibility of humanity has been tinkered with over, many, many lifetimes for a long period of time. And so humanity has been encouraged into a mindset of seeing everything as if it's a functional system, a little bit like a computer game in a way. Now, what I would say is, as a little bit of a sort of heartful message, is to say, never allow yourself to get fooled into thinking that you are trapped in some kind of a simulation, whether it's generated by others or you are generating it yourself. Because you as a source intelligent being can change your reality to whatever you wish to be. But you have free will, so you can also choose to fool yourself. That is part of the free will condition. You can convince yourself you are a victim. You can convince yourself you're stuck. You can convince yourself that somebody else is doing this to you and you can't get out of it. None of that is true. It's all a question of how, you see, as energy lenses and having the ability to lens energy into different ways. Part of the conditioning of humanity has turned in upon itself by convincing itself so deeply in some cases that they are a victim to what goes on outside, that they replay that so again and again, and they reinforce it again and again, and they wonder why life is difficult. I've been through some of those myself, so I'm not saying I really do understand it can be quite tricky. But at the core of it, it really is, and the teams have told me this many times. You are in the prison of no one but yourself. That is the truth of it. And learning to understand how you are generating that prison for yourself and undoing it is the key. And how you are doing it is we're doing it by repeating these old traumas. You see, there's a film I watched recently saying, some people, carry their prisons around with them. That's so true. And, but metaphorically speaking, that prison could be repeating an old cycle of trauma. It could be repeating, getting yourself into trouble with person A or person B. It's a confinement system that keeps you again and again going through the same old. It's a prison. And so the way to resolve that is, again, learn what it is you are emitting to keep requesting that. Learn to go inside, and meditation can be very helpful for this, where you can go inside and ask your higher self, can you bring up and show me the energies that I have, that I'm requesting to keep going through this loop, going through this cycle, going through this, what appears to be a simulation, whatever it is, so that I can finally be free of it and replace it with true creative energetics, so I can create the life and the experience that I truly wish to create. And I'm not just looping through these old subconscious, unconscious patterns anymore. And so that's a big thing. And I find a lot of people, sometimes people have quite strong reactions to hearing that, because they really want to reinforce, no, they are definitely doing this. Well, there are people out there doing nefarious things, that's for sure. But again, as the advanced beings have said, They cannot override, your true energetics. They cannot force you to do anything you don't want to do. They might try and do all sorts of things to make you feel like you are forced to do it. But in truth, they have no access to what's in your core. Only you do. And only you can choose to connect with that, emanate it, and work with that. And there's nothing that anybody else can do about that if you choose to do that. That's the key. So really, I would say that there are qualities that, that many people are going through that are simulation-like, but fundamentally, all energetics stem from source intelligence. As those energetics compress, they take on, and one analogy I like to use, if you imagine an ocean, you're in an ocean, it's all just water around you. Suddenly, the intelligent form of the water says, what if I make little balls of ice? I can press and lock into form this fluid energetic, and I make structure out of it. What if I bring these components together and form a molecule? And now a cell, and so on and so forth. And with those, I can now make computers or technologies and other things as well. Ultimately, all those energetics are underlined by source intelligence, and they're held in play for playing these experiential games, these experiential wonders. Sometimes, like we've had experience, it's not always so nice. But the truth is, when you understand that source intelligence underlies it all, and you have access to that, and you can therefore change anything, no exceptions in your reality, you can reform those structures. And there's been so many examples of people that were able to change, manifest, do things like the masters of old. They can manifest things in the hand. They literally had, one-to-one influence over the energetic structures of materials, atoms, you name it, because they had access to what was in here. You see, you can only make changes to things if you have sufficient access to the fundamentals of what actually makes the changes. And so if you have access to the intelligence of the ocean, you now have access to change the ice cubes, the structures they make, and how they arrange themselves and orientate themselves. And if you map that to reality, you therefore have the ability to change everything about your surrounding that you wish. And this is how these beings operate. This is why the very advanced ones have crafts that are fluid. They can simply consciously choose to have that craft take on any shape. It will form to any shape they wish, because they have access to the source intelligence within that does that. That's the key. That's the key thing. And so for me, some beings choose to go the pure technology route and don't want to access source intelligence. So they manipulate things technologically. There's a limit on that. You can only go so far, and you reach a block wall. You can't go above that. Because there's only so much stuff you can do with structure, in that way until you've reached max capacity. But to go beyond that, you have to go in to source energetics. You have to learn to be a pure creator being. You have to learn to then get access to the very fundamentals of all of that, so you can change it. You can go far beyond the limitations of technological simulations, whatever you want to call it, or realities, or even just technologies in general. So there's so much that's like a whole series of conversations by itself. But I hope that just by saying that, it gives people a bit of a glimpse that, the going into your heart center is not just some nice airy-fairy way you're saying you want to be more kind or more caring. It really is a fundamental, existential center that gives you access to everything. The deeper you go, the more connected you are, the more access you get to the fundamentals, the more you can do. That's as it was explained to me. And these advanced races, they have that. They can be at any point around wherever they want to be. They simply lens, that energy, and they're there. That's the access to the fundamentals of reality they have. And so I believe that is where humanity is heading. And it's not about developing more advanced technology. It's the simplicity of going back inside here and practicing rebridging, reconnecting, and rebecoming source intelligence in human form again. Then you'll be able to develop things that are far beyond technological innovations, like you will not believe.
Wow. I'm curious, as we come up to the end of the conversation, we've been mentioning the Arcturians a lot. I'm wondering if there's anything that they would like to leave this audience with as a transmission for maybe integration of all that we've talked about, because we talked about a lot today. We've covered a lot.
Yes, no, I can feel them here. And so one of the ways that I communicate is that through my higher self. So I've been working to connect with my higher self literally every day since probably 2000 and let me see, maybe 4, I guess now. So it's been over 20 years now. And when you have access to that core intelligence again, communication becomes very, very clear and very perceptible. And one of the things they're saying is that to remind people of that when you go to sleep at night, one of the things that you can ask your higher self is to put literally, I call it a cocoon, but it's like an energy field that gets placed around you that begins to accelerate the bridging with, begins to accelerate the infusion with your higher self, living love, light, intelligence. And you can be playful with that, they're saying. You don't be rigid about it. Don't think, oh, there's a structure to this. No. This is one of the things that I had to learn and almost unlearn in the rigidity that I did have. That to now is that be playful. The more playful that you can be, the more open and accessible this is. That's a very key thing. That, playfulness, joyfulness, the source intelligence, 1-to-1, it's the same thing. Seriousness is not part of this at all. The more serious you are, the more you're actually contracting and you're limiting the amount of energy that comes through. It's kind of funny. Like I remember laughing about myself in the beginning when I was meditating. You'd be sitting there like focusing like crazy. Nothing's happening. What's going on? And the more this is when you really connect with that source energy, you do innately become more playful. And that source energy itself is playful. It will teach you in playful ways and it will act with you in playful ways. My higher self, my wife says, your higher self is such a joker. It's always, like making jokes about this and everything else. And that is the nature of high dimensional energetic. It is expansive. It's playful. It's fun. So that's key one, I would say to people, is what they're reminding me to say to everyone. Keep it playful. Do not get serious. Serious is seriously outdated. And one of the things when you use that cocoon, really relax into it as if you're taking a bath in the most beautiful warm water in the ocean. You can imagine, or even invite in, guides that you have that you work with and ask them to come closer to you and really ask them as well. They're saying to use that time with the cocoon to invite them to lift out, break down old energetics that are limiting you from keeping forward and opening up more deeply, and to help replace that with your higher self presence and higher self infusion. Because that's you. That's the real core you. You're asking them to really help you become more of the real you by displacing, dissolving, and moving out identities, traumas, fears, all the yucky stuff, all the low energetics that people cling to without knowing about it, and let that take place over nighttime and see how you feel when you get up. And they're saying sometimes when something is displaced, it will bring something up beneath it that was keeping in place. And so that continues by asking again, sit down in the cocoon, ask for the same thing again. Ask for them to help you clear, break it down. And they're saying that that's a very critical thing to break down, because these energetic structures can be quite solidified and quite stuck and stagnant. And they need a bit of dissolving down sometimes so they can loosen up and then just be displaced and cleared out. So that's another big thing to remember as well. And again, with all this, just keep it playful. If an idea occurs to you, like your higher self gives you an idea, why don't you try that? Why don't you add that into the mix? You haven't asked for that yet. Be playful with it and see, because it's your evolution. It's your path, and it's very personal to you. And so the direction your higher self may wish to take you in is very different from somebody sitting next to you, and that's perfect. That is a beautiful thing. And they're saying that the beauty and the perfection of heart-centeredness is something that is really going to become apparent to the human race. when the human race learns to, so what they're saying is when the human race learns to connect with the heart center, you will have access to living libraries, is the word they're using, of the entire cosmos. I know they've spoken about this before in other information they brought through. So this is a very good reminder. And somebody might ask, well, what does that mean? Well, for example, in ancient civilizations, they realized that they had libraries that were energetic libraries where you could only access that information if you reached a certain level to make sure that you are the right person accessing that information. Now, the universe is constructed in ways that the more deeper, more heart-centered you become more benevolent, compassionate, kind, considerate, all of the good things. You then reach a higher level and therefore can now access greater information, greater expanses of information. Ideas will come to you that you would never have been able to generate if you were still at the previous state that you were in before. That is going to really open up. You're going to start to get these beautiful and profound inspirations that seem to come out of, whoa, where did that come from? Well, the more you open up that heart center, that is going to happen more and more and more. And it's going to feel sweeter and sweeter the more you do it. And you're going to look back and think, oh my goodness, how did I exist in the state before without that access? Because, it's difficult to explain, but life takes on a benevolent sweetness that I never felt before in my intellectual days, of being of trying to search for the solutions in intellectual ways. But all the ideas that I was searching for, now that I have a greater degree of heart connection, the simplicity of what I was trying to get at then is so perceptible now, and realizing, oh my goodness, going after this intellectually was always knocking on a door that would never open, because you can't get access to what's behind the door in an intellectual way. You have to access it energetically. You have to be in a connected state inwardly in your source connection to open that door, to allow the information, the living experience of that living library of the cosmos, the planet itself, which is a living library in of itself, the solar system, this galaxy. It's all levels of, the more connected you are, the more access you have, because you can synergize now. You have to synergize with the level of energetics you wish to access. It really is, in one way of saying it, that simple. So yeah, so is there anything else that you'd like to share, my higher self or my teams here? No, that's the message they wanted to share. So, and one thing that they are saying, I'm not sure if that's a message they're sharing, is there is such a deep, the best I can describe it is such a beautiful, sublime, smiling, energetic. They look upon humanity in such a profound way. Everybody thinks, oh, wow, cool. The Arcturians, the Pleiadians, they're so awesome, And, in their conversations, they would look upon humanity saying the potential, the unimaginable potential you have as humanity is off the charts. They don't say that lightly. And I don't say it lightly either, because when you realize, when you infuse and awaken your body, the human system, to living source intelligence, what's waiting there to be discovered is going to be off the charts. And that in itself is just phenomenal. I mean, it's so exciting to me. It really is.
Wow. Dr. David, we end every show with a segment called The Final Trio. There are some questions that we ask at the very end. Before that, I would love to give you the space to tell our audience where they can connect with you, if they're new to your work, anything that you have going on right now, whatever you want to mention here.
Sure. So we have two websites, one of which is on Patreon, which is Infinite Source Creations. So what we did is we have most of the meditations on there are for free, but the ones that are personal activations, we ask for a small subscription, monthly subscription, to help the platform. But specifically, two free ones I want to mention for people is numbers 14 and 15. Those are initial activations to open what's called the Infinite Source Gateway, which is a direct portal within the Sacred Heart, the soul heart that is enmeshed within your physical heart. When you open that and do the second one, which is the infusion of the infinite source intelligence, just repeating those in themselves, people have been reporting profound experiences of just really infusing with love intelligence and deeper joy, deeper peace like they've never had before. So if you want to go and do those and just do those two and practice those are really fantastic ones. But if you want to continue as well, the source intelligence and the teams bring through these very profound activations to help continue stepping up the bridging between the sacred source heart center, the cellular structure, the mind, bridging and raising up everything and beginning this very powerful accelerated acclimation. So if you feel drawn to that, go check it out if you want to. The other website we have are innovations we developed with the teams. So they're sort of a small stepping stone towards the technology that they have. So these are devices which harmonize by taking degenerative coded structures in fields, whether it's your home, within the things you eat, all sorts of things, and transforming them into generative structured coding. So those devices you can find on horizontal-infinity.com. But I'm sure you're going to put that in the comments or the info. So you can find that stuff through there. There is a big waiting list, unfortunately, at the moment. We've been absolutely snowballed, by people wanting these, and there's a big waiting list, but we're hoping to solve that issue of how fast we build them, because they're very difficult to make. And it's taken me a long time to do it, but we're working on a solution to get that done faster, because there's a lot of people waiting to get those. So when you get there, you're going to see that they're out of stock, but you can add your name to the waiting list if you want to.
Beautiful. Now we'll include everything in the show notes. And for the final trio, the first two questions are personalized to every single guest. The last one we ask at the end of every show. So the first one I had for you today is, if you had to encode your entire body of work into a single principle for the future generations, what would it be?
I would say that in one phrase, it would be the energetic of love intelligence. That's the foundation. That's the core. That's everything I do is based from that.
And when future scientists look back, what new discovery that we will make will be the point that tipped humanity's entire paradigm for our future?
That's an interesting one. I feel my higher self smiling. I would say it's a collective effort. I would say that the choice for everyone to open their heart and connect within the source intelligence is collectively moving us towards that. And it is from there that the greatest ideas, the greatest innovations are coming from. So I would say it's not one individual per se, although there have been individuals like Nikola Tesla and other people that have really accelerated things. I would say that really it is the collective choice of opening the heart and letting yourself reconnect, rebridge, reblend with that intelligence that is the greatest thing that anyone can do. And that is what is leading to these great innovations as well.
Beautiful. And this last question we ask is called the time capsule question.
Okay.
And it requires us to travel a little bit out into the future, around 15 to 20 years down the line.
Okay.
The reason I chose out that time frame is because I believe that's going to be a time in history where the young generations of today are going to be stepping more into leadership positions around the world. And just like any great leader that's come before us, they've had great access to mentors, resources, knowledge, tools. Really all the tools that they need to be the best leaders that they can be. And you had the opportunity to leave behind a time capsule for them. And inside of this time capsule, you could choose whatever you want. It doesn't have to be something physical. It could be a frequency and energetic, something that you feel that when they open this, they will be ready to step into the highest potential for leadership, for the golden age, what the ancients called, the golden age, the future of humanity, what would you leave behind? Essentially, this is a question about legacy. What would you leave behind for the future generations?
That's an interesting, the way I would phrase that is, I think it would be a short note. And it would say, no matter what you do, if you are moving into a leadership role, if you're moving into an innovations role, whatever role that is that you are taking, the most important thing that you can do, as with the two other questions, is allow that role to come from your core, from your heart center. And the reason why I say that is because specifically you mentioned leadership. I believe that leadership is going to transform into something else rather than, lead in an old energy way that has been done. It is a lead by example in a way. It's a lead by actually being in the state that you're saying, like masters of the past came here. They didn't lead by pulling or shoving or pushing people or telling people what to do. They led by saying, this is what you can have. You have it inside you. Do you wish to do this? And the choice is yours. That to me is what true leadership is about really showing people what you can attain when you open access here. Because really, when people do that, they have an unending, unlimited access to anything they wish to be, to create, to say, whatever it is. So I would say to anybody who's doing that, saying, whatever it is that you do, just, the best advice I can give you as a time capsule, if you open that up, is make sure that you're connected within your heart center. Make sure everything you do comes from that place, because it will be infused with the intelligence of source, so that whatever you do is going to essentially be generated in the best possible way for you and everybody else and the planet as well. Whatever you do, it's always guided in that. The energy always works in that way. So there's no other place to do that sort of thing from than from here. So I would say that would be my message in a time capsule.
And thank you for being that example for people. Honestly, I just wanted to take a moment to acknowledge how beautifully you've merged both heart and intellect to be able to bring through such powerful messages for humanity. And it is such a pleasure. My heart received you in the most fluid way possible. And I can't wait to continue our conversations, brother. This has been such a joy. You've expanded me in ways that I didn't think we were going to go. And I think also we just scratched the surface. So thank you for your depth, brother.
You're very welcome. And I thank you again for inviting me on. I treat these interviews as they're very sacred ways to offer information, and I say to people that it's like a banquet. You can take what you wish, what you find delightful, and leave the rest. It's your path, it's your choice. My aim is really to simply explain my experience, my contact, my communications, my own growth and development, and hope that those offerings and sharings are going to help uplift you and help you expand beyond the things that are preventing you from being the true being that you are. It's really that simple. So thank you so much for inviting me on. And I'm really delighted to have met you. And I hope we have more conversations like this, because there's so much to cover. We've kind of
I don't hope I know. I don't hope I know.
Okay, cool.
Thank you.
That's
so
very
much.
cool. Thank you, Emilio. I deeply appreciate it. Lots of love to you, and lots of love to all of your audience listening. I hope you have a beautiful day, and I hope you've got whatever you need to get out of this information for yourself.
Lots of love.